Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1. Excellent. It's working. All right, you can mute it for a second until we hear Mike. Testing 1 2. Sit in the room now. Testing 1 2. So, Michael, if you happen to be able to hear that on the stream, I'd appreciate you letting me know. Okay. I understand. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3. Testing. So Catherine says we have audio, so we're good on the audio front too. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to hang up and I'm going to mute the audio so you won't be able to hear it anymore. Excellent. Thank you very much. Bye. You can now.
It's very clear if you want to hear it.
Nope, I believe you. Testing. This is a test to make sure that we have audio in the malt box that's coming through. Testing 1, 2. I'm sorry, I can't. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Are they all unmuted, Catherine? So they're unmuted, and hopefully we're getting audio to the press box coming in through the side. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Excellent. We're good. You can mute them. You can mute them now.
Testing. Good morning, everyone. Before we actually start the auction process, I would like to ask if there's anyone who is eligible to participate in the auction and who desires to place a bid today. Have you provided your bid envelope and your affidavit location envelope to Board Secretary P.M. Lewis for placement into our boxes? If there's anyone who has not done that, please come on up and do that before we start. Okay, please. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we're not opening anything. No, no. What time do you have? A few minutes of. Okay. We just have about 2 more minutes before we'll begin. We want to make sure we start at 10 a.m. Morning once again. Today we are going to be conducting the first auction in the initial round of auctions relative to the Category 4 casino facilities. The winner of today's auction will obtain the right to select a Category 4 location. All persons eligible to submit a bid envelope and an affidavit location envelope should have checked in with Board Secretary Pam Lewis this morning and provided their 2 envelopes to her for placement in the appropriate boxes. So once again, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who is an eligible bidder and has not brought their bid or their location envelopes up to the front. Seeing no response, let the record reflect that there's no additional bidders. So having received 4 bid envelopes, we'll proceed to have our board's Director of Hearings and Appeals, Linda Lloyd, to begin opening the bid envelopes. I can announce the highest bidder for the first auction in the initial round of auctions for the Category 4 casinos. The highest bid today is $50,100,000. So at this time, I would like to ask any bidder who has made a bid today if they believe that they have a higher bid than $50,100,000. Hearing no response, let the record reflect that the winning bid is $50,100,000, and I can confirm that the highest bid was received from Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association, LLC, who operates Hollywood Casino in Grantville, Pennsylvania. So now we are going to open the affidavit location envelope of Mountain View. All right, to continue the process, Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association, LLC, has identified their Category 4 location as latitude 39 degrees 54 minutes 41.56003 seconds north, also referred to as 39.9115445 degrees north. The longitude is recorded as 76 degrees 38 minutes 26.13762 seconds west, also referred to as 76.64059378 degrees west. Those coordinates are located in the municipality of the Borough of Yo, County, York County, Pennsylvania. So just to conclude the proceeding this morning, Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association is required to submit the full bid amount of $50,100,000 and no cents to the board by 4 p.m. on Friday, January 12, 2018. Failure to do so will result in disqualification of Mountain View and will cause the board to proceed to the second highest bidder and its affidavit location envelope. In the event that that happens, we will immediately notify all bidders of that fact, as well as the identity of the second highest bidder and the location chosen. The information will also be placed on the board's website. The remaining bids, which were open today but did not qualify as the high bid, along with all remaining affidavit location envelopes, will be taken by Director Linda Lloyd and secured as confidential to assist in ensuring that knowledge of that information cannot influence upcoming auction procedures. The next scheduled auction is to be held at 10 a.m. in this room on January 24th, 2018. This concludes our auction for today. Our thanks to all licensees who submitted bids today for their cooperation and their participation. So today we have a public meeting of the Gaming Control Board, and we're going to take a 10-minute recess before the public meeting commences. Testing. Okay. May I have your attention? We're going to commence the public meeting of the Gaming Control Board. Thank you very much.
Are we live? Okay, good. If everybody would please have their seats. Good morning, everyone. Having now completed our first Category 4 auction, we're going to proceed with our regular meeting agenda. I'm David Barish, Chairman of the Gaming Control Board. If you haven't already, as always, I ask you to turn off your electronic devices or put them on silent. Thank you all for being here today. With us are George Augusto, representing Russell Redding, Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Jen Langen, representing Joe Torsella, the State Treasurer, and Bob Coyne, representing Secretary of Revenue, Dan Hassel. Thank you all for coming. Quorum of the board being present, I'll call today's proceedings to order. First order of business, Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kind of surprised to see the entire crowd is left. I thought everybody was here to hear your presentation. Before we begin, I'd ask that anybody who's going to be speaking today, please state and spell your name for the court reporter prior to your presentation. Additionally, I would ask that any non-attorney witnesses please stand at this time and be sworn. Wow. All right, then. Mohegan, you can proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Christopher Soriano, S-O-R-I-A-N-O, from Duane Morris, LLP. I'm honored to represent Downs Racing LLP Downs Racing LP, as we respectfully request that the board renew the license of Mohegan Sun Pocono. As the board is aware, Mohegan Sun Pocono was the first casino to open in Pennsylvania, and its history has been one of success, a driver of economic growth and jobs, top-notch gaming and racing facility, and a great community partner. I'll turn the presentation over to President and General Manager Anthony Carlucci, who will introduce his team, and if we could see the PowerPoint is ready, we'll proceed.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Anthony Carlucci, General Manager of Mohegan Sun Pocono. C-A-R, I was going to get to that. C-A-R-L-U-C-C-I. I have with us today Tom Burke, our Chief Operating Officer, Michael Epps, our Vice President of Legal and Compliance, Bradford Cobb, our CFO, Katie Borkowski, our Director of Human Resources, Dale Rapson, our Vice President of Racing Operations, and Erica Tessier, our Vice President of Marketing. The topics that we'll be discussing today, I won't list every one of them, but The main topics as we go through the presentation today will be the tax revenue we generated, capital investment, job creation, just to name a few.
Okay.
Moving on to our present state of operations, we currently have over 2,300 slot machines, 91 table games, 18 of which are poker. We have a 238-room hotel, 13 dining establishments, 4 retail operations, a spa, a convention center, and approximately 1,500 employees. I'll now turn it over to Bradford Cobb, our CFO.
Thanks, Tony, and good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Bradford Cobb, COBB, much of it in Carlucci. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. Since Mohegan Sun Pocono began operations in 2006, we have generated $1.48 billion in tax revenue. $1.38 billion is attributable to gaming taxes, while the remaining $95 million was generated from payroll taxes, property taxes, sales and use, and other miscellaneous taxes. From 2014 to 2016, our vendor spend was $154 million, of which $100 million, or 65%, was with Pennsylvania vendors. Mohegan Sun Pocono is committed to be a good corporate partner. MSP entered into a memorandum of understanding with Plains Township to continue to pay the annual local share payment. We have an appreciation that local share funding serves as an important role, providing public safety and emergency services, promoting economic development, and other initiatives. MSP also serves as a major employer in the township, working with the township to address community needs and supporting many local organizations and charities, which Katie and Mike will touch on later in the presentation. Capital investment. Mohegan Sun Pocono has demonstrated a commitment to expand and improve the facilities and amenities we provide to our guests in the community. In 2008, we invested $196 million for our casino expansion. In 2010, another $15 million for the addition of table games. In 2013, $46 million for construction of the hotel and convention center. And currently we have construction underway on an Irish pub-themed restaurant named Molly O'Shea's to be completed in winter of 2018. On top of the large projects, MSP has routinely reinvested an average of $6 million per year to refresh and maintain our property and product. And for 2018, we have planned capital of $9.7 million. Excuse me. And now I'll turn it over to Katie Burkowski, who will talk about our employment achievements.
Good morning. My name is Katie Borkowski, B-O-R-K-O-W-S-K-I. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Mohegan Sun Pocono. And I'd like to take a couple minutes just to talk to you a little bit about our employment achievements. Mohegan Sun has continued to create jobs for the local community over the last 11 years that we've been in business. Since the property opened in 2006, we started off with an employee base of 200. 2 months later, we opened the doors with moving that number to 500. In July of 2008, we grew that number to 1,000 employees. And to this day, and year over year, we continue to create those jobs for the local community, and we have approximately 1,500 team members on property. But that doesn't include our 400 team members that our tenants employ, so that's very important to know. So over 99% of all of these team members are Pennsylvania residents. And more than 90% of them have advanced through the company and been provided growth opportunity. And so that has positively impacted over 600 team members in the last several years. We also have built some great relationships with a lot of the businesses and agencies in our local area, where we have received awards for our outstanding support of employees with disabilities, helping them get back into the workforce. And a great great fact to point out is that more than 60% of all of our team members that helped open up our property in 2006 are still employed with us today. Mohegan Sun has continued to hire aggressively from the local community, so much so that 60% of all of our team members on property only live within a 10-mile radius. We have a lot of great local colleges and universities that we've been able to leverage relationships with. And a fun fact is that 23 individuals on our senior leadership team, out of 12 of those individuals, myself included, had went to one of those colleges or universities. So with those relationships that we have built with the local schools and colleges, we have provided internships, created co-op opportunities from the vocational schools. We allowed for career shadowing, attending career fairs on a regular basis, providing interview practice and feedback right at the colleges, and conducting on-campus interviews. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Epps.
Good morning. My name is Michael Epps, E-P-P-S, my last name, and I'm here to speak on our success in diversity initiatives. Mohegan Sun Pocono is a minority-owned property, owned and operated, as it is owned and operated by the Mohegan Tribe of Connecticut, and all members of the governing body, including the chairman of the tribe, are Native American. With respect to our diversity in employment, minority and female employment opportunities have been greatly fulfilled at our property. Minorities make up 14.2% of our total workforce and 9.2% of our management and professionals group. Females make up 46.2% of our total workforce and 38.5% of our management and professionals group. The local minority population where Mohegan Sun is situated ranges from 3.8 to 4.1%. So our minority employment population exceeds the percentage of minorities available to us to employ in our local area. So we've exceeded that number. Another highlight is that with respect to procurement and things of that nature, 6.1% of our total expenditures are with MBEs and WBEs. Also, some other highlights in diversity. We hold a lifetime gold membership with the Wilkes-Barre chapter of the NAACP. We constantly participate with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Diversity Educational Consortium, and we're actively pursuing resuming a presence on their board. We also, in our property, hold quarterly diversity committee meetings, and our committee consists of members of our senior management. Later this month, we have planned and announced a supplier diversity outreach event, which will be a meet and greet with qualified minority and WBE, MBE vendors to allow the exchange of information on procurement and an opportunity to have in-person meetings. So we're constantly working to engage the community, particularly with respect to diverse vendors, to get them involved in the process, help them understand the process, and see to what extent we can facilitate their participation. Next to speak will be Tom Burke, who will address you with enhanced compliance and controls.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Tom Burke. I'm the Chief Operating Officer out of the corporate entity, Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment, and the Connecticut office, and I have the privilege of working closely with Tony and his team here at the Pocono property. In reference to our appearance last month, if we'll all recall, I thought it was important, and we believed it was very important to touch on and reaffirm Mohegan's commitment, both the corporate and the property levels, to regulatory and oversight compliance. Just quickly, I know we had spoken to it last month, and Mr. Petrie explained it in detail, but I just wanted to touch on the compliance and controls have been substantially enhanced and overhauled at both the corporate level and at the property levels, not just in Pennsylvania, but throughout the organization. We've created a corporate-wide compliance committee with an independent member whom many of you may know, a very seasoned regulatory operations expert, Tom Oriyama. We have retained a very experienced chief compliance officer who is here with us today, Mark Camella. We've implemented numerous new procedures. We've overhauled existing controls. We have issued and are in the process of issuing a new code of ethics across the enterprise. We've established and are advertising internally a hotline so that the team members have the opportunity to speak directly with the corporate group and with the audit committee, and numerous other oversights and compliance and controls. In addition, we've hired appropriate personnel at both the corporate and property levels to continue the regulatory and compliance procedures. And with that, I'll give it back to Mike.
Here at Mohegan Sun, we also have been aggressive in addressing compulsive and problem gambling, and I will give you a brief highlight of some of the things that we touched on in that area. We work with the Council on Compulsive Gambling in Pennsylvania, and we have established comprehensive training for all of our team members. We participate in Compulsive and Problem Gambling Awareness Week each year, and we contribute annually to the Council on Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania. Our total contributions since opening are in excess of $225,000 to the compulsive gambling organization. In addition, we also are actively involved in our community. We've donated to several organizations, and I'm not going to read through each page of donations and sponsorships, but it's important to note that we've donated to approximately 734 different local organizations just since our last relicensing in 2013. Our donations and sponsorships since opening total in excess of $5.3 million. Our commitment to the community is not simply monetary, however. We participate in community events, attending dinners, golf outings, and all sorts of other engagements. And several members of our senior management team serve on local community boards. Our team members also donate their time and energy within the community. We've participated in United Way's Day of Caring. United Way Day of Caring, the National Public Service Day. We participated in annually in Valley Santa, which is a situation where we go to a local department store and wrap gifts for the less fortunate families. We do a Toys for Tots drive, and we also participate in Leadership Wilkes-Barre. The next slide shows you some photographs of some of our community involvement opportunities. And next we'll turn it over to Dale Rapston, who will update you on our horse racing.
Good morning. My name is Dale Rapson, R-A-P-S-O-N, Vice President of Racing at Pocono Downs. I'm here today to speak on the commitment Mohegan Sun has made to harness racing. I've been with Pocono Downs 39 years, and I could tell you that the commitment that Mohegan Sun makes originally and still does goes way and beyond what is called for. As you can see in our slide up there, on the right is the paddock that was built in 2006. It's an indoor paddock, state of the art, and it's one of the finest in the countries. And on the left is our infield where the racing takes place. It's very scenic and probably one of the nicest ones in the country. Pocono Downs races live racing March through November. We simulcast daily, 364 days a year. We have 3 off-track wagering facilities. We have Lehigh Valley, Stroudsburg, and Carbondale. Pocono Downs and Mohegan Sun have been awarded the 2018 Breeders' Crown. We've been honored twice before to hold this event, and we're very proud of this accomplishment. Pocono Downs Racetrack is considered one of the, if not probably the best racetrack surface in the country. We have set many records, and we have the top drivers and trainers that just come to race at our racetrack. Pocono Downs is more than a racing venue. It's a fan-friendly event for family. We have parties for the Triple Crown like Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont. We had celebrity superstars come in to meet the fans. We had Joe Montana, Joe Green, Mike Schmidt in the last couple of years, and many more. We have great giveaways, and we have world-class racing sponsored by the Pennsylvania Racing Commission, including the Pennsylvania Sire Stakes. Racing highlights, as I said before, we have the greatest racetrack surface in the country. We have 55 world records. We're matched or broken at Mohegan Sun. We had the fastest trot ever in the world at Pocono Downs when Sebastian K did that. And we also had 3 of the top horses in one race last year here at Mohegan Sun. To conclude, we had our 50th anniversary in 2015. The racetrack is going into its 53rd year. We had great events. We had great events for the family, the fans, giveaways, and it was highlighted by the Budweiser Clydesdales. That's my report today.
Good morning. morning, board members and guests. My name is Erica Tessier. I am the Vice President of Marketing at Mohegan Sun Pocono, Tessier. Mohegan Sun is full of life. Life is about thrills, about having fun, and about making amazing memories. Since 2013, the Keystone Grand Ballroom has hosted a variety of events, from Jay Leno to Jenny McCarthy to Trace Adkins to most recently Tony Orlando. We have sold over 26,000 tickets, generating revenue of approximately $1 million from ticket sales, total attendance of over 53,000 guests into our Keystone Grand Ballroom from all over the Northeast. We also host charity events in the Keystone Grand Ballroom. So Ryan's Run Clash for Cash, that was a CrossFit competition we recently hosted. We also host the Spirit of Hope, which is the Northeast Regional Cancer Institute. We have Leadership Wilkes-Barre and the Pittston Chamber Women's Network are some of the events that we've hosted this year. Mohegan Sun Pocono also hosts entertainment around the property. As Brad mentioned, we have an Irish pub opening in 2 weeks, and we will have live entertainment on the weekends there. Breakers hosts Battle of the Bands and also karaoke contests. Elixir hosts music on the menu. Bar Louie has live bands weekly, and of course Party on the Patio, which we host weekly during Hot Summer Fun. The addition of the hotel brought new guests to our region. As you can see from this map, we have had guests as far away as Michigan and Delaware visiting the hotel, generating over, some of them getting over 12,000 visits to our hotel. So back to Tony for a promise delivered.
Thanks, Erica. So in conclusion, again, the Mohegan organization feels that we've delivered on our promise. To name a few: job creation, significant tax benefits to the state, our charitable donations, and our involvement in the community. The following pages have some testimonials. And then I'm available for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from Enforcement Council?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. John Crowe, CROHE, Assistant Enforcement Counsel for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. We don't have a presentation, but we do have a few questions. If I can please redirect your attention to slide 5. It was labeled operations. Is Mohegan Sun Pocono anticipating any changes to the figures on this slide by way of a change to the number of slots, tables, or employees?
No, not at this time. Not at all, actually. The only changes we are planning, which I think would be a positive, is relocating our poker closer to the phase two, casino floor. A lot of people still don't realize we have poker because it's kind of tucked in the basement type of thing. And we probably will not reduce our slot machines, however, get them more in the newer phase two, which will offer a much better experience for our guests.
Mr. Carlucci, as you get questioned, either pull the microphone a little closer to you or speak louder.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm battling a cough here, so I apologize.
Also, you're talking to counsel. I'm sure he can hear you, but
I apologize. Were you able to hear, or I could repeat it?
Okay. We're okay, but just try to keep your voice up.
Okay.
And of the 1,500 employees, can you estimate how many are full-time versus part-time?
Yes. There's roughly 900 full-time and roughly 600 part-time.
And can you tell us what benefits are provided to the employees?
I'm going to let our Director of Human Resources, Katie Borkowski, answer that.
Yes, absolutely. We provide a variety of benefits. Most important, the favorite for everyone, is the free meals that we do provide to all of our team members each time that they work. But we do provide a comprehensive medical, dental, vision, 401k package for all full-time team members. We also provide life insurance, AD&D, long-term disability, and we do have an employee assistance program, flexible spending. So there are a lot of benefits offered for our team members.
And are any of the benefits offered to the part-time employees?
The medical, dental, vision are not, as well as we do have a tuition reimbursement. But we do offer supplemental insurance coverage from outside companies for those part-time team members.
Does the 1,500 number include the hotel side as well as the gaming side? Or is that gaming only, that number?
Nope, that is a combination of both.
Okay. And can you tell me approximately how many are on the gaming side versus the hotel side?
Sure. The hotel side, there's approximately 200 individuals on that side, and the rest is on the gaming side.
Thank you. If I can now move your attention to slide 9, the commitment to the Commonwealth Township information. Can you please elaborate on Mohegan Sun's work with the township by way of just giving an example of a few local organizations or charities that you've worked with or donated to?
Yes, we donate to the Plains Township Lions Club, the Rotary Club, several one-off charities. Now, obviously, the Memorandum of Understanding during the fair share was obviously a very big benefit to Plains Township and comforting to them.
Slide 11, which mentions the opening of Molly O'Shea's, is that going to have any impact on the gaming floor or access to the gaming floor?
Not at all. Where it's located is right after our main entrance, after the entry point, so it doesn't change anything.
Okay. And then moving on to slide 14, which is employment achievements. Can you tell us what percentage of your management team has been promoted to their current position as a result of internal promotions versus outside hiring?
Sure. So we have approximately 80% of our management team have been promoted internally. There's a total of 56, and about 45 of them have been promoted in-house.
And then moving forward again to slide 16, can you just give us an overview of what types of internships that you provide and what responsibilities interns are typically given at the facility?
Sure. We do not have a formalized internship program, and the reason for that is because we want to personalize each experience for the student as well as the department. We don't want to put candidates in a position where they're just getting, filing papers. We really want to provide them an opportunity to have real work-life experience, and so we, put them into an area which we know that they're going to be able to really gain that knowledge.
And do internships have any access to the gaming floor, or do they ever require licensure to
not
part of this program?
No, they do not have access to the gaming floor unless we do provide opportunities for these students rather have a formal internship but come on board as a part-time team member. So therefore, if they do come on as a team member, they are licensed through the state. But internships do not have access to the gaming floor.
And lastly, my final question, and this is brought up in slide 36, which refers to the 50th anniversary week. Are there any gaming promotions or any events on the gaming side tied into that anniversary week?
Apparently there was not. There was a few minor things, but no major promotion from the casino side for the 50th anniversary.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time, and being that OEC has no further questions, I would like to introduce a few additional supplement exhibits. I have a supplement to what was previously marked OEC Exhibit 1, which is the Uniform Crime Reporting System report for Mohegan Sun for the year of 2017. I would like to supplement that with the UCR for the entire year. And I also have an addition to OEC Exhibit 5, which is the citation and adjudication for PA State Police Bureau of Liquor Control Enforcement versus BL Restaurant Operations LLC, citation number 17-0189. And also a supplement to OEC Exhibit 6, which is a consent agreement and board order entered into on October 6, 2017 regarding an incorrect poker deck and failure to report to the Bureau of Casino Compliance, which resulted in a civil penalty of $25,000 and investigative costs of $2,500. A consent agreement and board order entered into on December 16th, 2017 regarding violations of internal controls governing the issuance of free slot play, record retention, auditing protocols, and the issuance of comps resulting in 2 theft schemes with a civil penalty of $550,000, an investigative cost of $2,500, as well as a consent agreement and board order entered into on December 16th, 2017, regarding the employment of 2 unlicensed gaming service providers, namely Refer Local LLC and CBPOC LLC, with a civil penalty of $450,000, as well as investigative costs of $250,000. OEC would also like to introduce, in addition to OEC Exhibit Number 7, which are 3 compliance conference memos, which have been marked confidential pursuant to Section 1206. And finally, in addition to OEC Exhibit 8, which are 5 warning letters and Mohegan Sun's responses to those warning letters, which we also asked to have marked confidential. Additionally, Downs Racing and its affiliates and principals have filed renewal applications, and the board's
Do you want me to move that into evidence at this point? Accept the above into evidence at this point? Or are you moving to a second subject now?
Well, yes, I'll ask to have those moved into evidence at this
You should
point.
consider all the matters you referred to, unless there's objection from Mohegan, as accepted into the evidentiary record in this proceeding. You have any difficulty there?
Mr. Chairman, we've reviewed the supplemental exhibits. We have no objection to their admission. We joined in OEC's request that Exhibits 7 and 8 be marked as confidential.
Okay, thank you. You can proceed. I just wanted to make sure I got that in.
Okay, and that's all that OEC has.
Oh, thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from Mohegan back to OEC at this time?
I have no questions or comments for the Office of Enforcement Counsel, Mr. Chairman. Administratively, I'd like to move the presentation that was just presented into evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence as well. At this point, are there any questions or comments from board members on the presentation or any other related matter? Please go ahead.
Before I begin, just a comment on your presentation. You said $250,000 as investigative costs on the second area you discussed. I think you meant $2,500?
$2,500.
All right, just make sure of that. Mr. Epps, what's the definition of minority? How expansive? How do you describe that?
The minorities in our is other than white or Native American. So any other cultural diversity, cultural distinction as identified on an application would fall into the minority category. So Hispanic, African American, Pacific Islander, all of those other categories would fall into minority.
Okay, thank you. Question on the internships. Are they paid internships?
It depends on the position and whether or not they do receive credit for.
And how many folks, young people, would you have? You might have older folks, too, that are in college. But how many would you have a semester, let's say?
It differentiates from year to year. Sometimes we don't have any, and then there's some that we have 4 or 5 at a time.
Okay, and from local colleges and universities? Okay.
Yes.
The community involvement, you have a lot of asks, and you've given out over $5 million since 2006. How do you triage those asks? How are they handled? Do you have a committee, a group, et cetera?
Yes, it's exactly how we do it. We have a monthly meeting, and we have a committee, and we have a lot of repeats. We make commitments. We have a lot of new ones. We try to. Unfortunately, we haven't been increasing, but we have not been decreasing. We donate over $500,000 a year to local charities, so we think that's pretty significant.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. I have a couple of lines of questioning, so I think what I'll do is just, if they're for Mohegan, direct them to Mr. Carlucci, and for the Office of Enforcement Counsel to Mr. Petrie, and you guys could decide who should answer them. I was very pleased to hear that it was important enough to Mohegan Sun to acknowledge in your public presentation the hiring of people with disabilities. For me, diversity is a very broad definition, and the hiring of people with diversity with disabilities fits into the diversity category. So I'm just interested if you keep statistics about what percentage of your workforce are people with disabilities, if you could share that.
I'm going to refer to Katie.
Sure. Unfortunately, I don't have those statistics for you today, but I can certainly provide that for you. But that's something that we are very passionate and excited to be a part of on a regular basis. So we do work with local agencies like Keystone Community Resources and Step by Step, and we really take the time to place these individuals in these areas because we want them to feel part of the team and feel part of, you know, the greater picture.
Great. I would be remiss if I don't at least put a plug in as a former Secretary of Labor and Industry, where the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation is part of. The state has a whole bureau whose role is to place people in competitive, integrated employment. They work statewide with corporations and also with the local entities. So there's probably an Office of Vocational Rehabilitation somewhere in your backyard. And I applaud you for what you're doing and also encourage you to continue that and perhaps look to your local Office of Vocational Rehabilitation for something more formal. My second line of questioning goes to the financial information that I was provided to review in light of the coming up for the renewal and a 5-year renewal that we are considering. And I will ask questions generally, hopefully not to get into any matters that are confidential. However, I did notice, this is directed to Mohican Sun, in your financials that there is a carrying of I think we call it it's accumulated deficit that carries through the years, and I would like you to address as you can what effect, if any, that accumulated deficit has on your operations and your ability to operate successfully in Pennsylvania for the next 5 years.
I'm going to need some help with that. So I'm not familiar with the accumulated deficit. We may have to get back with some. I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, let me point that question to the Office of Enforcement Counsel, since I'm looking at.
If I could help a little bit, you have the reference to the page. That would probably help.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that the materials were prepared by Office of Enforcement Counsel, but if you guys have it, it was my Exhibit 9, background investigation report of Downs Racing LLP, doing business as Mohican Sun, Pocono, and it is in numerous ones of those, but and the pages are not numbered, but I do have a balance sheet.
I think Cyrus has found it. Has
okay,
located it.
that is. I'm not going to read numbers, but it is headed Mohican Sun Pocono selected information from the audited combined financial statements.
I apologize.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I apologize for the delay. You know, if need be, I can have our Director of Finance come up and explain this deficit. But the most important question is, we don't have any kind of issues as far as a going concern. This has more to do with the corporate office as we roll things up to them, and it rolls back to us. It has nothing to do with our liquidity or anything of our, you know, we're very financially stable. It's not an issue with that. It's more of an accounting, how we're doing accounting. So, okay. But again, I can have Dave come up and explain it.
Commissioner, would you like to hear from the financial?
Well, you know what? Let me put out all my questions, and then we'll figure out. Same thing along a similar line when you talk about the corporate. When I look at the Mohican Tribal Gaming Authority and financial interactions between you and them, and this might be a continuation of that question, is there anything about obligations to them, and if and when obligations can be called in, called on, called back, for lack of a better way to say it, that may affect your operational or financial viability within the next 5 years should your license be renewed?
I mean, again, I can answer that there's no issue with our financial status. It's really an accounting function, but again, I can have Dave come up and explain it better. Okay. But there's no issue with our financial status.
Let me turn to the Office of Enforcement Counsel. And again, based on the previous questioning, what I have viewed in the financial reports that you have put together for us to review, is there any concern by the Office of Enforcement Counsel about the financial or operational viability of Downs Racing for the next 5 years should their license be renewed?
No, there are no concerns. The debt, we track the debt, and we track the refinancing of all that debt. They've been very forthcoming with information any time that refinancing comes due. As Mr. Carlucci said, it has no effect on the liquidity of Mohegan Sun Pocono. All the debt is refinanced in a timely fashion. The interest rates are not outrageous. So we have no concerns moving forward with them financially.
And same thing with regard to the Mohican Tribal Gaming Authority or the Tribe of Connecticut and the relationship between those, and when loans or debts or things can be called back or called upon, so to speak. Any concern from the Office of Enforcement Counsel about whether that would have any negative effect on financial operational viability of Pocono, Mohegan Sun Pocono, for the next 5 years?
No, we have no concerns. The debt has actually reduced over time, and moving forward, as I said, we continuously track these matters, so we have no concerns.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have no concerns, I think, that require further discussion unless other members of the board do.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Logan.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I forget what page you talked about the local share, which is a statutory payment to the township. Do you have any other agreements that we may or may not be aware of that goes above and beyond local share? I'll give you an example. Rivers in my neck of the woods has a tremendous agreement with Pittsburgh and Allegheny County for the PPG at Paints Arena. Anything such as that, or?
To the best of my knowledge, no, other than, like I said, some local charities that we commit long-term relationships with that we do year after year. But other than that, it's just the
okay.
understanding of the town.
All right, thank you.
Is that it? Any other questions? Jen?
Obviously, you guys have been here within the past few months regarding certain compliance issues, and your compliance director was very nice. But I was curious as to if the changes you made would have caught the problems that you've had in the past, and what is your commitment to those problems? I know some of them were, I want to say, disclosure issues that maybe were of personal finances that you may not have been privy to, and I don't know if that would have happened. But as far as the other more internal controls related, and even if you can talk about that with Mr. Soper, would your internal control changes have caught some of these problems?
Yes. In all honesty, it's a very good question. In all honesty, we are. It's like unfolding a book type of thing. First off, the changes we made as Tom Burke, our Chief Operating Officer, talked to. We added corporate compliance. We've changed out the.
Mr. Carlucci, we're having a
apologize.
problem again. What's happening is, and I understand, you're turning your head to her, and we lose the microphone.
I apologize,
I'm sure
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Langen would understand it if you're talking to the microphone as opposed to establishing eye contact. It's really okay.
It's my upbringing. My parents would hit me if I didn't have my I got it. Still to this day, feel my father. But anyway, I do apologize. The issue, honestly, is we're discovering things even to this day, which is good news, bad news type of thing. But we changed out our whole senior management team, and as you do that, we have a new CFO. His first day on the job, comes in and he finds a few things that we need to fix. Nothing major, but it's a good story. We have people here that are committed to compliance and quite frankly, we're changing the culture. When somebody deliberately breaks a regulation, which we just had that, we terminate the person. Not because we want to terminate people, but we need to send that message. There's a point to the regulations, and we are, starting with me and my boss, corporate office, we are 100% committed to changing the culture to the importance of these regulations. Trust me, I never want to go through last month again.
We don't either.
Yes.
Did you have further questions?
No, I think that's fine.
Any other questions? If not, I want to thank you for the presentation. A vote will be taken on this matter later today under the Bureau of Licensing section of the agenda. Thank you all for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for your time today.
By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, January 9th, to discuss personnel matters and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters being considered by the board today. Additionally, I'd like to announce that the next Category 4 casino license auction will be held on January 24th at 10 a.m. in this room, as was the case today. Board staff will be conducting that auction. Next, we have consideration of a motion to approve the minutes and transcripts of the November 8th meeting. May I have such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the minutes and transcript of the November 8, 2017 meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Under new business, at this point, we're going to hear from Dave Wren, Director of the Office of Financial Management, who is joined by Administrative Director Claire Yantis. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here today to present the budget status update for the first half of the fiscal year, and then to request revised budgets as a result of the legislation to expand gaming in the Commonwealth. So I'll start with the fiscal year 17-18 budget. As you're aware, the current year appropriation is $41,665,000. As of the end of the first half of the year, we are within budget and on track to achieve a surplus due to higher than anticipated vacancies and lower than anticipated health benefit costs. Overall, first half expenses were up $46,000 or 0.3% to $18.2 million. Personnel expenses were $16.5 million or 91% of overall agency expenses. This is an increase of 3.2% over last year due to salary increases and a slight increase to the overall the overall benefit rate from 69% to 67 or 71% of salary expenses. The average employee count was basically unchanged. We were down one position from our average of 293 last year to 292 this year. In the operating and fixed asset expenditure categories, expenses totaled $1.7 million, or 9% of agency costs. This is down $460,000, or 22% from last year. The decrease is primarily the result of timing differences and the elimination of the non-recurring expenses related to last year's underage gambling awareness campaign. For the first half of the fiscal year, the largest operating fixed asset expenses were rentals and leases, which totaled $798,000, or 48% of all operating expenses. followed by services, which included fees for fingerprints used in background investigations at $301,000, and data and telecommunication expenses at $211,000. That's all I have on the first half expenses. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the...
Does the board have any questions about the current year budget? If not, proceed, please.
Next for your consideration are a revised fiscal year 2018-2019 budget request and two initial budget requests for fantasy gaming and video gaming terminals resulting from the new regulatory requirements included in Act 42 of 2017. Although the board is still in the process of developing regulations, policies, and procedures for this new legislation, it's imperative that we submit a budget request at this time, given that the governor is going to submit his budget request early next month. First, I am requesting to submit a revised request for our traditional administrative budget. The board initially approved a request of $42,015,000 at the October 4th, 2017 meeting. At this time, I am requesting an increase to $46,153,000. This includes $4.4 million for all gaming expansion under the purview of the board, except for work related to fantasy gaming and video gaming terminals, which, as I mentioned, will require separate appropriations. This request would include regulatory costs related to Category 4 casinos, multi-use gaming devices in airports, and interactive gaming, among other aspects of gaming expansion. I'm also requesting an offsetting reduction of $230,000 by eliminating funding for staff related to the opening of Stadium Casino, which was previously assumed to occur late next fiscal year. Thus, the net increase requested is $4,138,000. The proposed budget would be funded through a combination of $4,500,000 in restricted revenue, which includes application and license fees and chargebacks of gaming lab costs, and $41,653,000 in drawdowns from escrow accounts funded by operators. In addition, we are requesting separate appropriations of $2 million for video gaming terminals and $400,000 for fantasy gaming costs. These budgets will fund staff, investigative costs, and other startup costs such as applications development and the procurement of equipment such as computers for new staff. The fantasy gaming budget will be funded by a combination of application fees and assessments of each licensed operator's fantasy contest adjusted revenues. And the video gaming terminal appropriation will be funded by an assessment based upon a percentage of the terminal operator's gross terminal revenue. That concludes my remarks on the budget.
Anyone have any questions about the second aspect of Dave's presentation? If not, just a clarifying question for public purposes. The predominant cost driver in the 401 account, if you have the right reference.
1401 account.
1401 account. Am I right? That relates to hiring CCRs and related personnel for the Cat 4s that may be coming online at some point in the upcoming year?
That is correct. The majority of the staff would be CCRs at the Category 4 casinos.
Okay. Thank you. Having heard that, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the proposed budget amendment as described by the Office of Financial Management.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion's adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. The Office of Chief Counsel has just 3 matters before you today. Our first 2 agenda items are petitions, and the third is 1 report and recommendation. As the Office of Enforcement Counsel does not object to either petition, both of those matters will be decided upon the documents filed of record. The first matter is Raymond Orchard Construction Incorporated's petition for removal from the board's prohibited gaming service provider list. Raymond Orchard Construction is in the business of concrete and foundation work. The company was placed on the board's prohibited gaming service provider list in February of 2014 due to its failure to pay a $2,000 registration fee associated with its original GSP application. Raymond Orchard Construction has now requested removal from that list, and the Office of Enforcement Counsel does not object to the request so long as the company pays the $2,000 it had failed to pay initially, along with a $1,500 civil penalty, which would be standard for this type of proceeding. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the matter is appropriate for the board's motion.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. I would just like to clarify that the original 2000 application fee that was never paid, there was actually work done so that that person, that this company did work at a casino that should have required them to have paid that.
That is correct. That is a fee that they should have paid initially.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve Raymond Orchard Construction, Inc.'s petition for removal from the prohibited gaming service provider list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel and with the financial conditions requested by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The second petition before today is that of Z. Young Lai's request to lift the suspension of his gaming employee occupation permit. In December 2016, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for an emergency order suspension of Mr. Lai's gaming employee occupation permit after it had received notice that he had been arrested and charged with criminal offenses, which included 2 felonies. Specifically, it was alleged that in an effort to collect on a debt, Mr. Lai pulled out a firearm and struck an individual, causing injury. As a result of the allegations and charges, the executive director issued the emergency suspension. A hearing on the validity of that suspension was held, and a report and recommendation was issued recommending that the suspension remain in effect. The board issued an order on May 1st, 2017, adopting the report and recommendation and keeping that suspension in effect. On November 15th of 2017, Mr. Lai requested that the board lift the suspension after he was found not guilty on all charges which had filed against him, and that occurred during a bench trial. The Office of Enforcement Counsel confirmed that, in fact, the charges were dismissed and has no objection to lifting the suspension of the employee occupation permit. That matter is now before the board for a motion.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve Z. Young Lai's petition to lift the suspension of his gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, presenting the report and recommendation is Deputy Chief Counsel Steve Cook.
Morning. Board has before today for consideration 1 report and recommendation received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. The report and recommendation, which pertains to Chat Wynn's request for removal from the board's involuntary exclusion list, was forwarded to the board in advance of this meeting, and along with the complete evidentiary record. Additionally, Mr. Wynn was notified that the board was going to be considering the report and recommendation today, and that he had the opportunity to come forward and to briefly address the board. If Mr. Wynn is in the room and he wishes to come forward and address the board, I'd ask him to do so at this time. By way of background, on April 15th, 2016, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Wynn on the board's involuntary exclusion list, alleging that on July 3rd, 2015, while gaming at Mohegan Sun and Pocono Downs, he struck a slot machine, breaking the screen. Mr. Wynn admitted to his conduct on that day and was charged with criminal mischief, but the charge was later dismissed after payment arrangements were made to reimburse the casino for the damages caused. After Mr. Wynn failed to respond to the Office of Enforcement Counsel's petition to place him on the exclusion list, OEC filed a request for default judgment, and in August of 2016, the board issued an order placing Mr. Wynn on the exclusion list by default judgment. In June of 2017, Mr. Wynn filed his petition requesting removal from the list. OEC objected, and a hearing in this matter was held on August 29, 2017. Mr. Wynn attended the hearing and testified on his own behalf. OEC also attended the hearing, putting in documentary and testimonial evidence in support of their position. During Mr. Wynn's testimony, he admitted to his actions at Mohegan Sun, but claimed that he was never personally served with the original petition and was unaware that he was placed on the excluded persons list until removed from the gaming floor at the Hollywood Casino at Penn National Race Course as an excluded person. Enforcement counsel responded by putting on evidence that the original petition was sent to Mr. Wynn's last known address, was received and signed for by an individual later determined to be Mr. Wynn's sister, and additionally, upon cross-examination, Mr. Wynn refused to say whether his sister in fact informed him of the proceedings and the petition being received. It is also noteworthy that enforcement counsel's evidence showed that Mr. Wynn made only 1 out of the 4 payments due by way of restitution to the casino for the damages to the slot machine. After hearing all of the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued by the hearing officer recommending that Mr. Wynn remain on the excluded persons list, and that is the recommendation before the board today.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding Chat Wynn's petition to be removed from the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Mr. Wynn remain on the involuntary exclusion list.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel.
Thank you. Sue Hensel, Director of the Bureau of Licensing.
Thank you, Chairman Barish and members of the board. Before the board today will be 1 slot machine renewal, 1 Category 1 slot machine licensee renewal, a slot machine manufacturer renewal, and 858 principal, key, gaming, and non-gaming employee applicants. In addition, there will be the consideration of 8 gaming service provider applicants. The first matter for your consideration is the renewal of the Downs Racing LP Category 1 license. The license renewal hearing for this entity is now complete. In addition, the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. As a result, the license renewal is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that the board consider the order to renew the Category 1 license for Downs Racing LP.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from Enforcement Counsel?
Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the renewal of the Category 1 license.
Thank you. Any questions or comments or concerns from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the renewal of Downs Racing LP's Category 1 license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter for your consideration is the approval of a new fee schedule. We maintain a fee schedule on the board's website as guidance for our applicants. And this new fee schedule, which I have provided to you in advance of the meeting, is an update to the schedule currently posted. It includes statutorily set and discretionary licensing fees for entities that are a part of expanded gaming and indicates the application fees for those entities. It also reflects the licensing fees for the extended licensing terms from 3 to 5 years that were authorized in the Gaming Expansion Act. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the fee schedule.
Questions or comments from the board?
If you have no questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the licensing fee schedule.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the new fee schedule described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, we have the initial slot machine manufacturer license for Incredible Technologies, Inc. Incredible Technologies is a Chicago, Illinois-based business that manufactures slot machines. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with the background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that the board consider the order to approve the slot machine manufacturer license.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve Incredible Technologies, Inc.'s slot machine manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Also for your consideration is the approval of principal and key employee licenses. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 3 principals and 2 key employees. I ask that the board consider an order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the Insure Principal Key Employee License as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, there are temporary principal and key employee licenses. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary licenses to 10 principals and 15 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the issuance of temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, there are gaming permits and non-gaming registrations. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a list of 538 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits, and 242 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the order for those non-gaming permits and registrations.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the issuance of gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Also, there are recommendations of denial for 3 gaming employee applicants. In each case, the applicant was notified that he or she was being recommended for denial and failed to request a hearing within the specified time frame. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with orders addressing the applicants who the Office of Enforcement Counsel has recommended for denial. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the denials.
Enforcement Council continues to request denial in each instance.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board deny the gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration are withdrawal requests for gaming and non-gaming employees. In each case, the permit or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with a list of 41 gaming employees and 4 non-gaming employee applicants' withdrawals for approval. I ask that the board consider the orders approving the list of withdrawals.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the withdrawal of gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, we have an order to certify King Ventures LLC doing business as King Ventures as a certified gaming service provider. I ask that the board consider the order approving this gaming service provider for certification.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Question or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the application for gaming service provider certification as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? The motion's adopted.
Finally, for your consideration, are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 7 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask that the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the application for gaming services providers registration described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Bureau of Licensing.
Thank you very much, Susan. Next up, Office of Enforcement Counsel.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 21 matters for the board's consideration today, consisting of 4 consent agreements, 4 revocations, 1 suspension, and 12 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 1 licensee Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc., doing business as Parks Casino. The consent agreement will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel Dustin Miller. Representatives for Parks Casino are present, and at this time I would request that those individuals introduce themselves for the record, and that anyone not here as an attorney please stand and be sworn.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Brian Schroeder, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Chief Compliance Officer, SCHROEDER. I have with me Steve Fain, Director of Table Games, Steve Fahn, Assistant Director of Table Games. Gentlemen, can you please stand?
Thank you. We can
Good morning,
begin.
Chairman Barish, members of the board. Dustin Miller on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has a consent agreement prepared today for the board's consideration. This consent agreement arises from an incident at Parks Casino whereby a game of three-card poker was misdealt on 22 occasions over the course of a shift by a table games dealer. Regulations promulgated under the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act require that in the table game of three-card poker, the first hand is dealt to the patron to the farthest left of the dealer. On June 8, 2017, a Parks Casino patron complained to Parks Casino Table Games Department personnel that a table games dealer had incorrectly dealt the game of three-card poker while he was playing. Surveillance review of the dealer's activity revealed that the dealer had in fact dealt the game incorrectly on 5 consecutive hands while the complaining patron was at the table. Further review revealed that the dealer had dealt the game incorrectly throughout his shift. In each instance, the dealer incorrectly dealt a hand to himself before dealing a hand to the patron farthest to the dealer's left. In total, the dealer dealt 22 hands of three-card poker incorrectly over the course of the shift. Full restitution was made to the complaining patron and another patron who was present at the time of the complaint. None of the patrons involved in the other misdealt hands made any complaint to Parks Casino. The misdealt three-card poker hands brought in $500 to Parks Casino, and Parks Casino paid out $350 to winning patrons on the misdealt hands. On November 17, 2017, the parties entered into a consent agreement to settle this outstanding compliance matter. If approved, this consent agreement will be the first penalty assessed against Parks Casino for violating board regulations concerning table game dealing procedures. The terms of the agreement include a provision that Parks Casino shall reinforce existing policies and provide training, guidance, and reinforcement to employees to minimize the opportunity for similar incidents of this nature to occur in the future. And also, Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc. shall pay a total fine of $5,000. Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc. shall also pay a fee of $2,500 for costs incurred by the Office of Enforcement Counsel, Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement, and other related staff, which is consistent with the board's billing policy. Both the fine and cost shall be due within 5 days of the board's approval of this consent agreement. Counsel for Greenwood Gaming is here today, along with other Greenwood personnel. Thank you.
Counsel, do you have anything to add at this point?
Chairman and Commissioners, very quickly, I'll provide a quick summary of what we did in response to this incident, as well as remedial measures. The dealer who failed to follow the procedure was issued a written warning. He was an experienced dealer who had no prior dealing errors in his personnel file, and as a result, the table games management team escalated our progressive discipline schedule 2 steps to issue him a written warning. In addition, we pre-shifted this incident to all of our dealers and used it as an educational tool for our table games team to remember how to deal various games. In terms of remedial measures, we have begun a table games supervisor refresher training program. It's designed to reiterate operational procedures for various table games: shuffling, dealing, card handling. The remedial program is designed to refresh the machinations of various table game operations and avoid complacency in our supervisory staff level. We think that the coaching document provided, as well as the remedial measure, addresses this concern and hopefully should avoid it from repeating itself. We'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc., as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 2 licensee Holdings Acquisition Co., LP, doing business as Rivers Casino. The consent agreement will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel Beth Manifesto. Representatives for Rivers are present, and at this time I would request that those individuals introduce themselves for the record, and anyone that is not here as an attorney stand and be sworn.
Good afternoon. Ms. Davis, Lorraine Davis, who's Director of Compliance, has already been sworn when you did the earlier swearing of all witnesses who may testify.
Okay.
John Donnelly appearing on behalf of Rivers Casino.
Good morning. Beth Manifesto, Manifesto. And this morning we have a consent agreement with Rivers Casino to address 4 4 incidents wherein decks used in play did not contain the appropriate number of cards. Therefore, the integrity of the gameplay was compromised. The first incident occurred on December 10th, 2016. While blackjack table 105 was opened, a beverage was spilled, damaging 7 cards. When the pit manager replaced the damaged cards at 12:43, they not only put a replacement 3 of spades in, but they also returned the damaged 3 of spades to the deck. The deck was then placed in the shuffler, removed from the shuffler, and gameplay resumed with the extra card. After approximately 4 hours and 44 minutes of play on the table, the game closed, and the extra card was discovered at roughly 5:27 in the morning. In this incident, the shuffler was working properly, no shuffler lights were ignored, and the facts would indicate that the incident stemmed namely from human error. The compromised deck was used in the play of 863 hands. The second incident occurred on June 6th of 2017 at 22:47. A blackjack dealer accidentally left a spent red card, which was a 6 of spades, in the table's discard rack when he placed the used red deck in the shuffler. The dealer then took the next deck to be used, which was a blue deck, and placed it in the shoe. After drawing the burn card, he placed it upon the red card, which was in the discard rack, and continued dealing. When the dealer concluded dealing the blue deck, he picked up all of the cards from the discard rack, including the red card, hand shuffled the deck, and placed the blue deck in the shoe and dealt the game with the compromised deck. In this instance, the table shuffler did red light, and the dealer correctly notified their supervisor, who arrived and checked the shuffler. The issue arose when the possibility was not considered that the blue deck had been polluted by a card from the red deck, thus causing the shuffler's error. As a result, the dealer was advised to hand shuffle the blue deck and continue table play. This deck was then in play for 350 hands over approximately 1 hour and 23 minutes. The red deck was removed from the shuffler and bagged at 23:35, and no evidence exists to show that personnel were aware that it was missing a card. The red card was not located until the blue deck was bagged and hand-checked at 0:22 hours. On June 11th of 2017, at approximately 1:39, a mini baccarat dealer moved a red deck from the discard rack to the shuffler and took a blue deck out of the shuffler and placed the blue deck in the shoe. He removed the shoe's first card for use as the burn card. It, however, was a red-backed 4 of diamonds, which obviously should not have been placed in with blue cards. It was erroneously left in the shoe. After removing 2 blue burn cards, there was a difficulty with the shoe. The dealer then removed the blue deck from the shoe and reinserted the red 4 and the 2 previously drawn blue cards, along with the remainder of the blue deck, into the shoe. The first card, again drawn as the burn card, was the red 4. It, along with the 4 burn cards, were placed in the discard rack and play continued. A total of 64 rounds were dealt with the invalid shoe. The shuffler initially exhibited a red light at 1:47. At 1:50, the deck was removed, it was hand counted and placed back in the shuffler. The shuffler then exhibited a red light again at 1:59, but it appeared to go unnoticed until approximately 2:16, and the red 4 was quickly then located in the discard rack. The red deck, including the 4, were then placed in the deck checker at 2:24, and 3 minutes later the red deck was moved to the table shuffler. The blue deck was removed from the table at 2:39. 64 rounds were played with this invalid shoe. Lastly, on August 20th of 2017, at approximately 1:16, a blackjack dealer removed red cards from the table shoe. However, he retained 1 red card and used it as a cut card for the blue deck that was coming onto the table for play. The dealer then took the correct yellow-colored cut card and placed it behind the red card. However, the dealer failed to remove the red card, which was an ace of clubs, prior to use of the blue deck, and it was dealt to the dealer's hand at 1:52. 94 rounds were played prior to the discovery that the deck in this instance was compromised. I do want to mention that similar to the second incident, in this particular incident, the deck did not go through the shuffler. The shuffler apparently does not actually have a red light that it would show, but if the deck is appropriate and it's complete, it would exhibit a green light. They did not get a green light, and they did check the shuffler, but again, in this instance, they didn't come to the conclusion, or they didn't think it a possibility at that time that the card that was missing could have somehow become integrated into the deck that was engaged in table play. We, Rivers Casino and myself, entered into a consent agreement on October 18th of 2017. It would call for a $40,000 civil penalty and a $2,500 fee for administrative costs due within 5 days of the board's order should you accept this consent agreement. This would be the first monetary penalty for such specific incidents.
Any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. 4 things. We disciplined all the personnel involved in this matter. We've also changed the training. We've previously been doing training off-site. We moved the training back on-site and are retraining all the dealers. We also bought new shufflers, although in most cases these are human errors and not shufflers, although the new shufflers...
Keep your voice up, please.
The new shufflers are more accurate. And to the extent we could determine who the patrons were, we paid out their losses. So the patrons who won didn't get anything more, but the patrons who lost were reimbursed their losses to the extent we could find them.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board at this time? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Holdings Acquisition Company LP as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 3 licensee Woodlands Fayette LLC and its management company IOCPA LLC doing business as Lady Luck Casino. The consent agreement will be presented by Assistant Enforcement Counsel John Pokoneski. Representatives for Lady Luck Casino are present, and at this time, once again, I would request that those individuals introduce themselves for the record and that anyone who is not here as an attorney, please stand and be sworn.
Gary Hendricks, Vice President and General Manager, HENDRICKS.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Happy New Year to you. Stephen D. Schreier with the firm of Blank Rome on behalf of IOCPA, also known as Lady Luck Casino Nemacolin, and Gary Hendricks, who you've heard is our Vice President and General Manager of Lady Luck Casino Nemacolin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, John Pokoneski, P-O-K-I-N-I-E-W-S-K-I for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Good morning, Chairman, fellow board members. The next matter for the board's consideration is a proposed consent agreement that involves a self-exclusion violation which occurred at Lady Luck Casino Nemacolin. On August 25th, 2017, RN, a self-excluded individual, went to Lady Luck Casino and was on the gaming floor for approximately 3 hours and 48 minutes. During this time, RN was issued an access pass for entrance to the casino floor from a Woodlands employee, actively bought in and gamed at 6 different table games, was allowed to cash out chips on 2 separate occasions, and was allowed to collect $340 in winnings through wagers at Lady Luck. RN's presence in the casino was discovered on September 3rd, 2017, after a compliance review was conducted by the Bureau of Casino Compliance. On September 3rd, 2017, the Bureau of Casino Compliance notified IOCPA that RN was on the gaming floor while still on the exclusion list. IOCPA immediately informed the Pennsylvania State Police, but failed to notify the Director of Office of Compulsive and Problem Gaming within 24 hours of notification by the Bureau of Casino Compliance of RN's presence on the gaming floor. This proposed consent agreement represents the first consent agreement entered into between Woodlands and IOCPA and OEC regarding self-exclusion violations. However, on August 28, 2014, and August 12, 2016, OEC conducted compliance conferences with Lady Luck regarding previous self-exclusion violations. At this time, OEC requests that a board approve the consent agreement between the parties. The terms of the settlement include that within 5 days of the board's order approving this consent agreement, that Woodlands and IOCPA shall pay a total civil penalty of $10,000. Also within 5 days of the board's order approving this consent agreement, Woodlands and IOCPA shall pay the board $2,500 for the costs incurred by OEC, BIE, and other related staff in connection with this matter. IOCPA shall remit $340 to the board's Office of Compulsive and Problem Gaming, which represents RN's winnings that IOC failed to confiscate. If you have any questions, I would be happy to address them at this time.
Any questions from Woodlands? Not questions, comments?
No, just that we take the problem gambling very seriously. We'll continue to work with our employees, training them on our program to prevent self-exclusions from being on the floor, and put in place something that funnels any self-exclusion notification directly to our compliance officer to be notified to the proper, the Division of Problem Gambling in this case, immediately.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Woodlands Fayette LLC and IOCPA LLC as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Thank you for coming.
Next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 2 licensee Mount Airy No. 1 LLC, doing business as Mount Airy Casino Resort. The consent agreement will be presented by Assistant Enforcement Counsel David Tepper. Representatives from Mount Airy Casino Resort are present. At this time, I request that those individuals introduce themselves for the record, and anyone not here as an attorney, please stand and be sworn.
John Coletsu, Executive Vice President and General Manager of Mount Airy. That's spelled C-U-L-E-T-S-U.
From the testimony you're about to give this morning will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, well.
Good morning, Chairman Barish, members of the board. David Tepper, T-E-P-P-E-R, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. This proposed consent agreement involves a violation of the board's self-exclusion list. On August 11th, 2017, an individual on the self-exclusion list with the initials DW was issued a Players Club card at Mount Airy. This Players Club card account was created for DW even though he already had a Players Club card account in Mount Airy's system, which had been flagged as a self-excluded patron. DW used his new Players Club card to place wagers at slot machines on August 14th, September 18th, and September 19th, 2017. DW was caught when he requested a duplicate of this new Players Club card from Mount Airy. Mount Airy's conduct violated provisions of the Act and the board's regulations in regard to self-excluded persons. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board approve this consent agreement between the parties. The terms of settlement include that within 5 days of the board's order approving the consent agreement, Mount Airy shall pay a civil penalty of $7,500 for the alleged violations. Also within 5 days of the board's order approving the consent agreement, Mount Airy shall pay the board an investigative fee of $2,500 for costs incurred by OEC, BIE, and board staff in related to this matter. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any comments from Mount Airy?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Michael Sklar, S-K-L-A-R, on behalf of Mount Airy. Mr. Chairman, just briefly, John's going to just explain the circumstances around this and the remedial measures that have been put in place.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the matter. Unfortunately, the patron DW, who did receive a second card, was noted by one of our supervisors, who is someone that was on the exclusion list when he went to receive a second card. In this particular matter, it was a case of complete employee negligence, not a matter of improper procedure, but more of just a negligence. Unfortunately, the employee had to be immediately terminated because of the severity of the infraction. We, of course, take our self-exclusion matters very seriously. We just in the month of November completed all of our compulsive gaming training property-wide. We're over 1,000 of our team members actually took the training. That training class was also videotaped, so that any new members that may come onto the property and recent new hires will have to watch that videotape as part of our employee orientation before they can actually start in their respective new positions.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Mount Airy No. 1 LLC as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chairman, this is not on that motion, but before Cyrus gets ready for his next thing. And I apologize because it was my motion, and I don't know if this is important. So let me just state something, and then perhaps whoever keeps the record could double check if it's important. On the matter, two matters.
Just hold up for 1 second.
Sure.
We haven't. I got all in favor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
I thought we did.
You're just a quarter of a second too early.
Go ahead.
All opposed? None are opposed. The motion is adopted. Commissioner, please proceed.
I apologize.
No problem.
2 matters ago on Holdings Acquisition Company LP. I do not recall, kind of brain freeze, being put on the record when describing the consent agreement what the actual fines were. I could be wrong, and I also don't know if it's important that they be stated for the record. So if somebody could just kind of double check that, and if there's anything we need to kind of go back and repeat on the record, I guess we could do that some later. So I just
I'll restate it for the record.
Okay.
It was a $40,000 penalty and $2,500 in investigative fees.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Next.
The next five matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel has filed complaints seeking the suspension of 1 non-gaming registration, as well as the revocation of 2 gaming employee occupation permits and 2 non-gaming registrations, which were issued by the board. Each complaint has been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the person named in each complaint. The person named in each complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment and properly served the same upon each named person. Therefore, the facts in each complaint are deemed admitted, all filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and request the appropriate board action.
Good morning again. Next on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the gaming employee permit of Christopher Canarella. In June 2017, Mr. Canarella was charged in regards to a January 2017 DUI. In July 2017, Mr. Canarella was again charged with DUI in addition to felony fleeing and eluding police following an April 2017 incident where he led police on a high-speed chase while intoxicated. Both of these criminal matters are still pending. As a matter of history, in November 2015, Mr. Canarella had been issued a warning letter from the Office of Enforcement Counsel regarding an arrest for DUI. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke Christopher Canarella's gaming employee permit.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Christopher Canarella's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted. Before we proceed, we need to take about a 4-minute break here. Everybody can stay where they are. Just a short break.
Taking a break, I will.
Now, next matter, please.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Tamara Haken, Haken, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Patrick Coleman. Mr. Coleman was previously employed as a security officer at Hollywood Casino. On August 5th, 2017, Mr. Coleman was charged with theft by unlawful taking for removing $180 from a lost purse he was handed in the course of his duties as a security officer before turning the purse into the lost and found. OEC requests that the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Patrick Coleman be revoked.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Patrick Coleman's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the non-gaming employee registration issued to Bernard Rijoui. On July 6, 2017, Mr. Rijoui entered a guilty plea for a third-degree felony criminal trespass charge resulting from his arrest on April 7, 2017. OEC requests that the non-gaming employee registration issued to Bertrand Rijoui be revoked.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Bertrand Rijoui's non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Chairman, members of the board, John Crow again for the Office of Enforcement Counsel, CROHE. The next matter before the board is a complaint to revoke the non-gaming registration held by Gerard Marcinko, who took and deprived a voucher from a patron in the amount of $94.95 by retrieving the voucher from a slot machine after a patron left the machine to use the restroom. Mr. Marcinko was charged with theft by unlawful taking and receiving stolen property, however, ultimately pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the non-gaming registration held by Mr. Marcinko be revoked.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the revocation of Gerald Marcinko's non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Michael Rowland, R-O-L-A-N-D, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter is a request to suspend the non-gaming employee registration of Christina Tom. Ms. Tom was approved in April of 2015 as a tour guide for 88 Baccarat Tour, Inc. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement and the Office of Enforcement Counsel became aware of several unexplained incidents involving Ms. Tom, where she was observed handing off large sums of money to individuals on the gaming floor at Sands Casino. Ms. Tom was issued a notice of a sworn interview to explain her actions. However, upon receiving the notice, Ms. Tom advised that she was retired from 88 Baccarat Tour, Inc., no longer wished to work in the gaming industry in Pennsylvania, and that she would not be attending the sworn interview. Ms. Tom is currently not employed at any Pennsylvania casino or with any of the board's licensees. The matter is now before the board to consider the suspension of the non-gaming employee registration of Christina Tom.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the suspension of Christina Tom's non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel has filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in the petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each named individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted, all filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of the inimical conduct will be placed on the board's public website.
The next two matters on the agenda arise from the same fact pattern, and each involves a request to place the individual on the involuntary exclusion list. Christian Troncoso Sanchez, Eric Cabrera, and 5 other individuals were observed attempting to perpetrate a scam while playing roulette at Sands Casino. The 7 individuals involved in this scam illegally gained a total of $13,440. Christian Troncoso Sanchez was charged with the Pennsylvania State Police with 2 counts of theft by deception and 1 count of conspiracy. A bench warrant has been issued for his arrest. Eric Cabrera was charged with 3 counts of conspiracy. He entered a guilty plea to 1 of those counts, and the other 2 were withdrawn. The matter is now before the board to consider the placement of Christian Troncoso Sanchez on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Christian Troncoso Sanchez to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The matter is now before the board to consider the placement of Eric Cabrera on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Eric Cabrera to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next is a request to place Adiljan Imanov on the involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Imanov was observed capping multiple bets while playing Texas Hold'em at Sands Casino, and he illegally benefited $1,430 from his activity. He was charged by the Pennsylvania State Police with theft by unlawful taking, theft by deception, and knowing by trick or fraud to win or reduce loss under the Gaming Act. The charges are pending, and the matter is now before the board to consider the placement of Adiljan Imanov on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Ada Amajan, just to make sure, to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Dustin Miller on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter today is a request for placement on the board's excluded persons list involving Kristen Covington. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Ms. Covington on the exclusion list after she was caught entering the vehicle of another patron without permission at Parks Casino on July 22, 2017. She had previously been permanently evicted from Parks Casino in 2016 after she was found to have stolen the cellular phone of another patron of Parks Casino. Based upon the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked that the board place Kristen L. Covington on the board's exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Kristen Covington to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter today is a request for placement on the board's excluded persons list involving Shem J. Ellis. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Ellis on the exclusion list for taking the cellular phone of a patron of Parks Casino without the patron's knowledge or consent on April 20th, 2017. Mr. Ellis was criminally charged with theft and related charges for his actions and was found in possession of methamphetamine at the time of his arrest at the casino. Based upon the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked that the board place Shem J. Ellis on the board's excluded persons list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the addition of Shem J. Ellis to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter today is a request for placement on the board's excluded persons list involving Ronald Green. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Green on the exclusion list for physically threatening bodily harm and using a racial epithet towards Parks Casino staff prior to his ejection from Parks Casino on January 2nd, 2017. Mr. Green was criminally charged for his actions, to which Mr. Green pleaded guilty. Based upon the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked that the board place Ronald Green on the board's excluded persons list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Ronald Green to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter today is a request for placement on the board's excluded persons list involving Curtis E. Levin. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Levin on the exclusion list for taking a bag belonging to another Parks Casino patron which contained an iPad and the keys to the patron's vehicle without the patron's knowledge or consent on December 6, 2016. Mr. Levin was charged with theft and receiving stolen property for his actions. Based upon the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asks that the Board place Curtis E. Levin on the Board's excluded persons list.
Questions or comments from the Board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board approve the addition of Curtis E. Levin to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Beth Manifesto for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. On July 28, 2017, security at the Rivers Casino was contacted by a female patron who reported a male had come up behind her and had inappropriate physical contact with her while grabbing her around the waist, and then he ran off. Seconds later, he approached her again, and the patron is seen pushing away at his hands as he continued to come towards her. She was able to locate two female casino employees who took her to the security desk. Surveillance conducted a review and was able to identify the individual she had described and where he was on the gaming floor at that time. PSP was contacted and they approached Matthew Ondo. At that point, he attempted to run, and it took 4 individuals to subdue Mr. Ondo. PSP then charged him with stalking, indecent assault, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and harassment. His common pleas court date is the 12th of this month, and prior to his leaving the property, Rivers issued a lifetime ban to Mr. Ondo. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked the Board to issue an order placing Matthew Ondo on the Board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the Board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board approve the addition of Matthew Ondo to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the Board. Tamara Haken, Haken, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next 2 matters on the agenda for the Board's consideration arise from the same incident. On August 13, 2017, Mr. Samuel Ray Harris and Ms. Andrea Henderson left 4 children under the age of 10 unattended in a van parked in the Hollywood Casino South parking lot for approximately 43 minutes while they played slots inside the casino. At this time, OEC requests that the Board issue an order placing Samuel Ray Harris on the involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the Board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board approve the addition of Samuel Ray Harris to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
OEC requests that the Board issue an order placing Andrea Henderson on the involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the Board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board approve the addition of Andrea Henderson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Chairman, members of the Board, John Crowe, CROHE, for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter before the Board is a petition to place Joseph Trigar on the Board's excluded persons list for engaging in an argument with another guest, yelling obscenities, arguing with Mohegan Sun security staff, and refusing to leave the property on January 14, 2017. Mr. Trigar was permanently evicted from Mount Airy Casino on December 20th, 2014 for having a verbal altercation with the pit boss, and was previously ejected from Mohegan Sun on October 16th, 2015, December 25th, 2015, November 27th, 2016, and November 29th, 2016 for being intoxicated, threatening guests, arguing with Mohegan Sun security staff, and refusing to leave the property. The Office of Enforcement Counsel issued Mr. Trigar a warning letter on January 19, 2017 in response to his actions at Mohegan Sun. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now asks that Mr. Trigar be added to the Board's excluded persons list.
Questions or comments from the Board? May I have a motion?
Chairman, I move the Board approve the addition of Joseph Trigar to the PGCB's involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board. My name is Ashley Gabriel, Gabrielle. I will present the final matter for the Board's consideration, which is a petition for the placement of Luis Vieira on the exclusion list. On January 27, 2015, while on the gaming floor at Parks Casino, Mr. Vieira reached into the bank of a roulette table and stole 4 $500 purple chips. a total of $2,000 worth of chips. Mr. Vieira left parks without cashing out the chips and did not make restitution. As a result, Mr. Vieira was charged with theft by unlawful taking movable property and receiving stolen property. The status of his criminal case is inactive. On June 18, 2017, Mr. Vieira was found gaming at Sugar House Casino. Staff identified Mr. Vieira due to his involvement in the 2015 theft at parks. Mr. Vieira was removed from the gaming floor and taken into custody by the Pennsylvania State Police. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Luis Vieira on the exclusion list.
Thank you. May I have a motion? Oh, questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Luis Vieira to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you. That concludes today's public meeting. As I mentioned earlier, our next scheduled Category 4 auction is going to be held on January 24th at 10 a.m. in this room. And the next public meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 7th at 10 a.m. in this room. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is adopted. We are adjourned.